Ross on your left, Carpenter on your right, number 2 and number 13 respectively on our SCG Tour Player of the Year leaderboard. And as we did mention, we watched Tom play against Infect a little bit earlier this weekend. He knows both sides of this matchup.
Yes. A lot of experience playing with Infect, both Modern and Legacy.
Good old Infect and good old 8-Rack. I know you're an Infect guy.
I'm also a Rack guy.
Oh!
This is my childhood. It's him to Torak instead of Wrench Mine.
I actually did not know that.
Instead of Funeral Charm, it was still Funeral Charm.
That's great. Tom on the draw, clearly. They'll be given the green light here in just a moment, and we'll see what they can do. I'm excited to watch it. I really am. Carpenter going to start by sacrificing a Windswept Heath. And he'll get himself a basic forest. There's a Glistener Elf, and away we go. Thoughtseize. Twisted Image, Become Immense. Just a couple of lands. Not the best hand I've ever seen.
Would assume this would be the Become Immense. I suppose if Ross has another discard spell in his hand, he'd probably take the Twisted Image first because the Become Immense is not being cast next turn. Either anyway, noteworthy, and Inkmoth Nexus there in Carpenter's hands. One of the stronger cards in the matchup here from Carpenter's side. Ross's deck is just not generally solid against creature lands. And it's something that even if the resources get stripped out of the game, at least he's still got some Infect threat.
Well, Become Immense is down. We head back over to Bradley Carpenter now. You mentioned kind of the weakness that Tom's deck does have to creature lands like Inkmoth Nexus. So here's Noble Hierarch. Hiya! In for 2 Infect damage. Ross's Infect counter being used against him as a Wrench Mine the draw.
Dope. Take the draw, discard spell 1, get 2 cards on 2. Couple Funeral Charms, the game's basically over.
It's basically done, yeah. Oh, there is Wrench Mine.
There it is.
I think Carpenter's probably just going to want to discard the Breeding Pool and the Twisted Image of himself with the Inkmoth Nexus.
Yep, stands to reason.
No. That Graveyard's getting loaded up there for Become Immense, too. That's a minor concern if you're Tom. Could just die if Become Immense is the top card of the deck.
Oh, yeah.
Plenty of cards in the graveyard here for Bradley Carpenter as he's going to sacrifice that Windswept Heath and get himself a Breeding Pool that enters the battlefield tapped.
Another reason why the Nexus is so critical in this matchup. Very hard for Ross to interact with Become Immense off the top if there's a Nexus in play.
Infect Nexus. Inkmoth Nexus, excuse me, it's the draw. Here's an attack for 2 Infect. Ross up to 4. Let's go back over to the boss. Raven's Crime, the draw.
This would be a great spot for Smallpox.
Wouldn't be bad. See a lot of discard right now for Tom, however. He needs interaction. Cards like Dismember, Smallpox, Funeral Charm. Didn't think I'd be saying that this weekend.
Funeral Charm would be great.
Yeah.
Great right now. Our first Pro Tour together, myself, Adam Horvath, Lodavich, played a lot of Funeral Charms. We were anticipating quite a few Spectral Lynxes and River Boas in the event.
Hello.
Turns out we were the only ones playing with them.
Here is a Smallpox. Turns out we were wrong. We're going to see what Carpenter is going to sacrifice here. Looks like he's good. Thinking out losing Glistener Elf, yes, and Forest. And now there goes Inkmoth Nexus. Ross going to play a Swamp and simply pass the turn back. Carpenter will draw. Going to fire up the old Inkmoth Nexus. Here it comes for 2 Infect. Ross up to 6. Carpenter will just pass the turn back. Ross will draw. Picked up a Swamp. Can he stop the Infect beats?
It's just the Nexus. That's the last piece of the puzzle here. Game gets pretty easy if you can clean that up.
Looks like he may have a copy of Liliana in hand.
Tom's deck not the best at interacting off the top of the deck.
Here's Liliana. Spell Pierce? Hello. Good top deck there from Bradley Carpenter. He'll very quickly untap and draw. Pump Spell will do it. Become Immense will take care of it. And that is going to do it there for Bradley Carpenter. He wins game number 1 over Tom Ross. Infect very quickly up a game over 8-rack.
Nexus, best card in the matchup here for Carpenter.
I think you're almost certainly right about that. Infect and the Inkmoth Nexus. Just the fact that it's a land and it's difficult for Tom to be able to beat means that he's going to have to go to the drawing board, and Bradley Carpenter's going to do the same thing. So we might as well do that too. Tom Ross with 2 Waste Not, 1 Night of Soul's Betrayal, 2 Deathmark, 2 Disfigure, a Leyline of the Void of Flaying Tendrils, 2 Relic of Regenesis, 2 Asylum Visitor, and 2 Death Shadow. You've seen the sideboard a couple times today, but this is a bit of a different matchup. So what do we like here?
The Flaying Tendrils, the 2 copies of Disfigure, and the Knight of Soul's Betrayal in particular, very well situated for this matchup. You saw the problem that the Nexus created. Having Knight of Soul's Betrayal shuts that down along with every other Infect threat, and the other removal spells and sweepers are going to do good work here as well.
On the other side of things here for Carpenter, 2 Spell Pierce, 1 Dispel, 1 Twisted Image, 2 Nature's Claim. A Viridian Corruptor, 2 Dismembers, a copy of Distortion Strike, 2 Wild Defiance, and then 3 Kitchen Finks.
So I love the Viridian Corruptor in this matchup as it's another threat, and Ross has all sorts of artifacts and enchantments to blow up. What's interesting to me is the 3 copies of Kitchen Finks. It's a little incongruous with Carpenter's game plan here, but it is very well set up to fight just removal spells and edicts, so he may want to go to that as well.
You think Tom draws again?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely.
Just stick with this?
Yep.
It's just so weird. It's difficult for me to actually just comprehend.
The issue isn't he didn't get tempoed out of that game. That game went on for quite a while. So it wasn't, he just died on the 3rd turn and didn't get his gloves up in time. He didn't find an answer to it in the Nexus. So if anything, I think that game confirms that he would rather be on the draw than the play.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, these players will sideboard. They'll shuffle up. Get ready here for game number 2. I would typically say Tom Ross will be on the play, but Tom Ross will have the decision if he'd like to be
option.
on the play. Yes.
It's an option.
He'll have the option if he'd like to play or not. Now, Tom Ross, a 2-time invitational champion, back-to-back, as most of you do know, and now someone who I guess potentially could go back-to-back as well as our current invitational champion for our New Jersey Invitational. That's Liam Lonergan, who did get the job done with Elves in Modern. We've seen that deck some here this weekend, and as a result, he has his likeness on this particular card. He is an Elvish Warrior 1/1. Now, one of the fun things about winning the Invitational is that he gets to become this, but also we get to distribute out to our players, and here are the ways to go about getting it.
Variety of ways starting on September 23rd. First, if you come to any of the SCG Tour events, either an open or a classic, you'll receive this token as part of the participation package. If you can't make it out to the SCG Tour, all orders from StarCityGames.com starting September 23rd, $5 or more will be shipped with this token for free.
Congratulations to our New Jersey Invitational champion, Liam Lonergan. We will see him at the Players' Championship later this year. And perhaps we'll see these 2 players as well in Tom Ross and Bradley Carpenter, who are certainly giving it their best go. Tom right now number 2 on our Player of the Year leaderboard, and he qualified in season number 2. And Bradley Carpenter, well, he's been grinding out for a little while here on the SCG Tour. Number 13 currently on our Player of the Year leaderboard is a 24-year-old from St. Petersburg, Florida. Clearly a very big Taco Bell fan. He's lead singer of a pop punk band, and he is a fantasy football fanatic. Hopefully he set his lineups today. And has
almost certainly.
And has a player from, I believe it is Louisiana State University.
Player you may have heard of, an up-and-coming wide receiver from Louisiana State University who now plays for the New York Football Giants, Odell Beckham Jr.
You believe that he is a good player?
I think he's someone to keep an eye out for.
Okay, got it. That's just great fantasy football advice.
Yeah.
Tom is on the draw here. Now, do you approve of Odell Beckham's hair?
Yes, love it.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
I have no criticisms of that man. He can do no wrong.
You and your New York Football Giants. Big year for the Giants. A big game for the Giants. 1-0.
Yep.
Great start to the season.
Finally fired Gramps.
Yeah.
7 years too late or whatever.
Yeah. Put him in the old. Just put him out.
Yeah. Just time. You know, it was just time to take the keys away.
Yeah.
Happens to all of our grandparents at some point.
It's very true. It's just old Gramps had to set the.
It's just time. It's just time.
This is a death mark. Hello. Love it.
Not a ton of targets in Carpenter's deck, but that doesn't really matter.
There's enough.
There's enough, and all Ross wants to do is trade 1-for-1 as much as possible.
Yeah. I would say that there are enough targets.
That's a pretty gruesome piece of art by modern Magic standards.
I love that piece of art.
It is beautiful, but that one's pushing a little bit.
Is it time for a Blighted Agent? Oh, yeah.
Smallpox.
Well,
Let's do it.
We know what you're rooting for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah.
The only thing Tom needs now is to discard a Bloodghast. Then he'd really be living the dream. This is a pretty brutal smallpox.
Another shadow. An Ashen Ghoul.
What year is this?
A Death Spark.
Death Spark, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Currently on sale at StarCityGames.com.
Not in foil.
Yeah.
They don't have it in foil.
Well, look at this is gruesome. You want to talk about gruesome?
Yeah, I said for a modern piece of art.
All right.
Yeah, they pushed the boundaries back in the day, except for New Phyrexia, which is oddly morbid.
Some beatdowns going on in that set.
It's true.
Smallpox still resolving. All right, there goes the Inkmoth Nexus. Bradley Carpenter not left with a lot now. Tom's got to sacrifice a land. He'll leave Urborg on the battlefield, unsurprisingly. Pass that turn back. Bradley Carpenter takes a draw. Well, Inkmoth Nexus is a good Magic card. There's that. Pass the turn back. To the boss we go. It's a swamp. I can tell he has a rack in hand because it's disgusting.
I can watch this all day.
Well, we might be. Here's a Raven's Crime. See you later, Vines of the Vastwood.
So I think Carpenter just hoping to be able to hold on to this Kitchen Finks and get to that.
Well, Tom says, how about Raven's Crime again? Carpenter will lose Nature's Claim. Pass the turn back, and Carpenter top deck the land for the Kitchen Finks. Looks like the answer is no. Here comes Inkmoth Nexus. Tom's got one Infects. Let's go back over to the boss. Now, this is always an interesting thing to me is how do you play games that go like this? Here's the rack. Pass the turn back. Does Carpenter draw the land? I do not believe so, but didn't get a great look. Okay, it's Might of Old Croja in for 1. Boss up to 2, Infect. Back we go. Is it time for a Smallpox, perhaps?
Well, now with a Thoughtseize off the top, I think he can just Thoughtseize now. Guessing Viridian Corruptor likely to be the one to go here. Not a great looking hand here if you're Tom, as a third land off the top here for Carpenter is so good.
I almost think, and this is tough. I kind of want to take that Finks, but you can certainly make an argument for the Corruptor, too.
Well, the argument behind taking the Finks is if Carpenter plays the Corruptor, then your Smallpox is good, but Carpenter still has the Nexus left over.
A rough spot, that's for sure.
Yeah, this is a very solid hand here for Carpenter given the circumstances.
Not sure what card I would take. I know which one I wouldn't take. It's the Might of Old Croja. All right, Thoughtseize resolves. Pass that turn back. Carpenter still waiting for that third land. May have lost the Finks, but Corruptor's still pretty good. He draws. It's a Glistener Elf.
That's great news here for Tom, because if he casts it, the Smallpox in his hand becomes spectacular.
Yeah, he's not going to cast it, and I wouldn't either. Just going to get in for one more Infect, pass the turn back, draw a card, Will Ross. They picked up a Swamp for the turn.
Is it time just to fire off the Smallpox?
It feels like we're getting to that point. You're playing such a weird game with this deck because you're trying to be so resource light. All right, here's Smallpox. Tom is ready to discard. Bradley is too. So Bradley's going to lose the Inkmoth Nexus and the Corruptor. Interesting.
It looks like his plan here is to keep Might of Old Croja plus Glistener Elf and hope to win the game that way. Pretty risky if Tom has a removal spell, but he might get a very quick kill otherwise.
Noble Hierarch was the draw. He's still going to go with the Glistener Elf past the turn back. Tom will draw. Liliana the Veil. Huh. Things even getting more interesting now. He'll play a Swamp. Simply pass the turn back. There's a rack. Noble Hierarch was a great draw for Brad last turn, and now Wooded Foothills is a great draw. And this is this lethal? 4, 5, 6?
One short.
One short. There's the Noble Hierarch.
But I feel
sacrifice.
with the line Carpenter's taken, we've come this far. He's got. I think he's got to let it rip this turn, and then hope that Ross does not draw a removal spell for the Glistener Elf.
I like the way that Carpenter's played this game.
Yeah, it was an unorthodox line, but I like that he bailed on the 3-mana cards and felt like he had enough to win the resource-light game here.
Well, now it's time for Tom Ross to draw some sort of removal spell. It's just a Swamp. That's for Liliana the Veil, and I don't think that's going to cut it, folks. And that's going to do it. Bradley Carpenter is going to win this match over Tom Ross 2-0. Infect will be taking down the Infect Master. And Bradley Carpenter moves up to 11-2, while the boss, T. Ross, going to slide down to 10-3.
So Ross probably looking here at winning the next 2 rounds to make the top 8.
Yep.
Carpenter in a great position, win 1 more, and maybe get to draw in the round after that.
That's been difficult for Carpenter this year, however. He's been in good spots in tournaments like this before, and we've seen him kind of crumble in the later rounds. Richmond 2 weeks ago, he lost playing for top 8, and then we've seen him lose playing for top 8 other tournaments. So we'll see if he can get one of the 2.
Yep.
Make it into the elimination rounds.
Well, you know, the back end of tournaments typically get harder because you're playing against people who are more skilled because they're also at X2 or X3 or whatever. Yep. So not surprising the rounds get a little bit harder as things go, but I'm sure Carpenter would like to have a couple more top 8s under the belt.
Yeah, he needs to get a couple more and keep working his way towards that Their Players Championship, which again Tom Ross has already qualified for. So we'll keep our eyes on Brad and see if he's able to get a win over the next 2 rounds, because he wins one of the next 2. We'll see in the elimination rounds later this evening. Another match on the way here for you guys, I believe, in just a moment. But Patrick, I know you've been a big Infect fan. I know we've watched 13 rounds of this tournament so far. You still on the Infect train? If you were playing here amongst our 600 players, you'd still be playing Infect maybe?
I think so. There are matchups that are not good for you, and there are certain cards that people can go to that are not good for you also. But I look at it as a deck that is pushing the boundaries of what should be permissible in the format. It's very fast, it's consistent. Blighted Agent / Inkmoth Nexus creates problems for a wide range of opponents, even in some of your bad matches.